Are you reading the headlines about the budget and the debt ceiling and the billions of this and the trillions of that and frankly left completely confused? Well, today we'll get a translation for the rest of us. This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard, and today I'm joined by Bill Beach, who's joining us by webcam from Washington at the Heritage Foundation. He is a phenomenal number cruncher and also the director of the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis. Hi, Bill.
Stuart, great to be on the program with you.
Thank you for making some time for us today. The first question I have for you, you're a person who takes all these numbers that we're hearing about and you help the rest of us understand what in the world they're talking about. The question, I want to ask you questions that regular people would ask, people like me. The first one is, why is this so confusing and difficult? Why is it so hard to just figure out what you take in and spend what you take in?
It's a mess. I mean, there's so many numbers to start with. That's part of the problem. Then we have what are called baselines, and everybody has a different baseline, and a baseline is something you compare the numbers to. So let's just put all that to one side. The real issue here is how much money can the government spend? Right now, we have spent up to the total limit of that money, and we have to basically borrow in order to increase to continue spending. But we've hit that borrowing limit. That's the issue here. So the amount of money coming in is so much less than the amount of money going out that the government has to come in and just take a bunch of money off the credit markets. I mean, what is it? We're getting about 16%, if you look at it in terms of the economy, in terms of revenues, 16% the size of the economy is coming in revenues, but we're spending like 24% the size of the economy, so we have this huge difference. So Washington is all wrapped around right now trying to figure out how to get more money. It's not a simple matter of just taxing more, because that would slow the economy, and then they say, well, just cut spending. People say, well, just cut spending. But see, there's a lot of obligations that have already been made, a lot of laws that have already been passed. And so you just can't immediately cut spending. So they're trying to slow it down right now and increase borrowing. That's basically where we're at.
And that kind of helps with this next question. A lot of us are wondering, let's just stipulate for the purposes of argument that lawmakers in Washington really do care about the country. They really do understand this is a serious problem and that they're trying to do something about it. Why can't they just get together and start undoing those laws you just talked about that are forcing the government to spend more than it takes in and bring us back to some kind of sanity here?
Well, I guess if it was foreign aid that we had to fix, or our contributions to the UN or something small like that, sure, they could do it. But here's something that I think will be interesting. About 60% of all of our deficit problems, all of our debt problems, come from just Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and working age health care that the government supplies money to. So just like 4 areas, and a lot of that's health care. Well, you know, it's really complicated, all this health care business. Now, some people here in Washington believe the government should be supplying all the health care to people that they need and that they want. It's the one, of course, that's the problem, because we always spend a little bit more on health care than we actually need. So it becomes a real emotional issue. How are you going to take away people's or reduce health care expenditures or Social Security, for example? A lot of people depend upon Social Security. So the issue is not easily resolved because of the emotions involved. And the Republicans and the Democrats both want secure Social Security and health care and retirement. There's no question about that, but they have very different visions of how to get there. And since it's like 60% of the problem, it becomes really difficult for us then to just come together and sign a document and say, let's cut spending, because the spending we have to control, cut maybe is the wrong word, but control through good reforms is the most emotionally laden spending that there is here in Washington.
And we're getting a reflection of that here. We're hearing from people who are saying we need to cut spending, we need to get this under control, but don't touch my Social Security.
Exactly what people say all the time, because, you know, I understand this. I have relatives who are in retirement, well into retirement, and they're worried about their Social Security and Medicare. With this debate, some people have told them that they won't get Medicare or Social Security. Well, of course, that's not true.
Yeah.
This debt ceiling increase now allows us to pay all the benefits, but we are going to have to reform those programs for our children and our grandchildren to have those same things in their retirement. There's no question about that.
Now you were talking about the debt ceiling. I think the best analogy, as I understand it, is that's kind of like the credit limit on your credit card. And the government has maxed out its credit card, which happens to have a credit limit of 14 trillion, which is quite a credit card. And now they're wanting to raise that even more. Eventually, somebody has to pay off the credit card. Who's going to pay?
Well, all the debt is going to be paid by the taxpayer of the United States, basically. Hopefully what we can do is combine some spending reductions with sort of lengthening out our payment period. But in the end, just like a household has to pay its credit cards off with its earnings from its, from labor or from its investments, however it's making its money, we're going to have to pay our credit card off, our debt off, with the taxes that come in. Now, what we're trying to do here, Stuart, is avoid a tax increase. We've got trillions of dollars worth of revenues coming into the government of the United States. You'd think that would be enough, but it hasn't been so far, because our deficit each year is over $1 trillion. So it's obvious that we need to cut spending, reduce spending, so that the revenues that are coming in are sufficient to pay for the ongoing programs. Hopefully, one day we can get into a position where we start to run some surpluses. When the surpluses start to run, that is, more revenues are coming in than the money going out, then we can actually make real reductions in the debt that we have. People say, oh, that'll never happen. But that did happen for 4 consecutive years back in the late 1990s. We actually had surpluses coming in because the economy was moving forward so rapidly and producing all these revenues. So we've done it before. We certainly can do it again, but we can't do it unless we reform Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to make them affordable for the government and secure for the people that depend on them. That's where we are headed in this debate. Hopefully, what the Senate is doing today and what the House did yesterday is going to make this possible, that we can have these reforms. Otherwise, I don't know, our children and grandchildren are going to be looking at a lot of debt they're going to have to pay through higher taxes.
Now, you just mentioned, as we're recording this, the House and Senate, the Senate just passed this deal that came up. Did the deal actually solve anything? I mean, we're hearing all different claims about it, and everybody has their talking points. But just from the big picture, did it solve anything? Does it help?
It helps. It doesn't solve. In 2012, the year that we're moving into right now, the spending is going to fall by about 2%. And then in 2013, it's going to fall by about 3.5%. Now, that doesn't sound like very much, but that's spending we won't be actually incurring. And that's a very good thing, because we're, as I've said several times, we are really way over our revenues in terms of our spending. So it helps. I think what it does is it gets the people here in Washington, the policymakers, thinking about a solution. Obviously, it's been real difficult to come up with these reductions. You've been reading the paper. They're fighting here like a bunch of cats inside a hot tin barn. They don't want to go through that again. I mean, it's unpleasant enough just being a politician 24 hours a day, but when you actually have to solve problems, then it's real hard work. So my guess is they're going to put together this commission. There's a big group of 12 policymakers, members of Congress, House and Senate, that are going to have to sit down and work out a solution this next year to some of these things that are making the deficit so big. They'll look at Medicare. They'll look at Social Security. They will also look at our tax system to see whether we can have one that's more productive of tax revenues, but also better for the economy. All of that's going to happen in the next couple of years. I think if I was a taxpayer right now, and listening to this program, I would cross every finger and every toe I have, because the future really depends on the success of these policymakers in solving these spending problems.
What can regular folks like us do? Is there any way we can even speak into this debate?
But there's 2 things I think you can do. One, on the one hand, make sure you tell your members of Congress and senators not to dig the hole any deeper.
Good idea.
We don't need new programs. We need to reform programs. There's plenty of savings in programs, and there's plenty of stuff we don't need to be doing. So really become politically active. Next year's a presidential election. I hope everybody plays their role as the active citizen. Now, the other thing is that we need to look after ourselves better. I talk to young people all the time, all around the country, and urge them to open savings accounts, find financial planners, live within a budget, And that's real important, because if the government can't solve its problems, and we don't get a hold of these spending things, and debt continues to go up, we are going to have to be more reliant on our own resources. So speaking directly to everyone, make sure that you live within your means. Cut those credit cards up once they're paid off. Open savings accounts. That way you'll be going into retirement in much better financial condition than you would otherwise. These programs, if they're fixed, will be there for you, but what's the probability that Congress will be successful? So far, their track record isn't really that great.
All right. Well, Bill, thank you for keeping an eye on this and for explaining it in a way that we can get. It's very helpful.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Tom Minery is on the road this week, and before he left, I did ask him to give us a little update on something that happened, some good news that came out of CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee. It's the largest annual gathering of conservatives in the country.
Well, there's some good news coming out of CPAC. As you know, CPAC is the largest conference for conservatives that takes place every year. It meets in Washington, D.C., and last year there were about 10,000 people. And this coming year, we will expect all of the Republican presidential candidates to be there giving speeches. Now, CitizenLink has been a sponsor of CPAC for the last couple of years, but the leadership a couple of years ago also invited a tiny little gay activist organization called Go Proud to be a sponsor. That's a problem, and the reason that's a problem is that although Go Proud is economically conservative, it stands against the traditional definition of marriage. That made it real hard for CitizenLink to stay in, and in fact some of our sister social conservative organizations pulled out because of the entrance of Go Proud. Well, we decided to stay in and work on the problem from the inside, and we're pleased to be able to report that the parent organization of CPAC, called the American Conservative Union, its board voted just a few days ago to disinvite Go Proud from all future CPAC events. That made us breathe a lot easier, and we were pleased that the board did what it did.
And we appreciate that update from you, Tom. And thanks to all of you for watching today. You can always write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. Let us know what you think about this whole budget thing and all the different ways that it's being spun out of Washington, D.C. We encourage you to pray for our elected officials and, frankly, for the future of our nation, as we just got a really good view of the kind of mess that we're in as far as our budget. Pray for the future of this country, that there will be those who will stand up and have the courage of conviction to do something about it. And remember, stand tall and be heard.